here with Jeanne Quérent. Jeanne is the Senior Vice President of Digital and Commercial Innovation at Bayer. She's a member of the Pharmaceuticals Executive Committee, as well as in her spare time being Bayer's CIO. She has
a CIO.
Oh, okay, all right. So not enough spare time. She has a PhD in immunology, a number of other medical degrees, and has been a leading voice for digital behavioral interventions to support patients. We're very happy to have her with us. Thank you very much, Jeanne, for spending some time with us.
So thank you very much. And no, I'm not the CIO for the entire Bayer, but really focusing on the pharma side, and which is, converges with the really entrenched idea that technology is part of the business. So happy to have this exchange.
Great, thank you very much. So as you know, we have 3 questions to ask you, and I'm going to dive right into the first one. As I mentioned, you really have been a voice for digital patient interventions over the last few years, and you pointed out that different patients have different results with the same treatment, and it's a function of their behavior. And that therefore they should be approached differently. And of course, at Observia, we talk about behavioral diagnostics and using digital tools to carry out those behavioral diagnostics. And I wanted to ask, what have you seen these last couple of years in terms of tools to do that behavioral diagnostic that you find to be interesting?
So to the point of the behavioral diagnostic, I think, what digital is going to help us doing, and when you talk about behavioral diagnostic, it's dragging us out the idea that if something doesn't work, it's because the patient is not doing things properly. The problem is that the misconception is that if things don't work, the treatment is perfect, the patient is imperfect. Well, we are all imperfect, okay? That's fine. But the problem is to find a way where we really understand how the patients can integrate the treatment within his or her life and make it something acceptable and manageable. So in terms of tools, of course, the most advanced things have been developed, I would say, in the space of diabetes. And in the space of diabetes, where the link with digital actually came quite naturally, because you need to register data, you need to manage your data, your blood glucose measurements. And also, a lot driven actually by the type 1 diabetes community, managing the carbs and helping people to also fit their life, their activity, their food with the treatment, and how you can manage a better outcome, which for the patients is like, being in the right range. So we have seen things, and we're working with OneDrop. So I'm going to tell you, it works very well, and it does actually works very well. And it has this aspect of being, a bit less top-down, but much more focused on the patient and how you integrate with the life. Now we are trying to extend to other areas, and I've got to say, I'm looking into good solutions for women's health, for cardiovascular. I've not seen a complete effect yet on diagnostic piece on these areas. There are things on women's health. I think it's much more collection of data and a bit of nudges and interactions, but not a complete behavioral diagnostic, except for the things on the contraception that are actually supporting also the ask of women for non-hormonal interventions. So, for me, the overall arena of this behavioral diagnostic is still very much work in progress. And we are still seeing a lot of conflicting forces between the pharma thinking approach, which tends to be kind of top-down and prescriptive, and a more behavioral approach. And the convergence is in the making, I would say.
Okay, very interesting. And for that matter, that leads into my second question. You also, at a certain, in another interview, talked about the relative disappointment of the speed with which personalized medicine has really come across. And here we're talking about personalized behavioral interventions. Do you think that can go faster? And what are the pitfalls or the breaks that could slow it down that we need to avoid?
So, yeah, I'm part of that generation, of the post-genome generation, where we were so enthusiastic about having their genome. Actually, we had one genome, and we were so proud about that. And where we were thinking globally that we had found a solution to many, many diseases, and that it will open the gates to much more, tailored interventions. Now, the very big pitfall is, if you want to go in that direction, you need robust data. And collecting data between, a sequence of DNA and the outcome takes time and takes a tremendous amount of data to be collected in a very broad population. And knowing, in addition, that most of the diseases we are trying to tackle are actually multifactorial, it's making the problem quite complicated. So finally, in terms of personalized medicine, it's really only the oncology that, during the past 20 years made some definitive concrete steps. In behavioral, you've got the same challenges. It means you need data and you need time to relate data, interventions, and outcomes. However, with the means of digital interfaces, the price to collect those data and the willingness also to have a continuous interaction is higher. And you can get really more data and faster. And I think that may be, coming out a very big difference in our ability to progress in terms of personalizing care to people. And again, our genes are part of the problem. Our life and the interactions that we have with the environment are also probably a bigger part of the problem. And I always remind people who are big fans of genetics drives everything, that even type 1 diabetes, homozygous twins, are only 60% convergent, which means you can have the same genome and not the same outcome in terms of an immune disease that we know is highly driven by genetic. So the environment counts, and those parameters can really help us to better understand what can be the major determinant of progressions or non-progression, and what are the potential interventions, that could change the course of things.
It's very interesting. You almost raised the question of, just as there are epigenetic factors that come and influence the genetic expression, perhaps there are epibehavioral factors as well that can affect people very differently in a similar environment.
Yeah, it's the case actually, and there are a lot of external factors that can influence our genetic, our epigenetic. There are extremely interesting studies actually in the field of epigenetic and metabolism, and especially obesity, for the moment mostly in animals, but where there are some external factors like, food or, overburdening your body with calories that can change at one point the course of things and are making things so complicated to reverse a trend later on. And where some, I would say, more targeted or tailored interventions may be actually better. But it's for the moment in theory. And there is a lot of biology to discover still. And beyond the biological factor and the scientific factor we can study in the lab, if you think about the hundreds of physiology during a day, we are probably oversimplifying in the lab. And the hope is that by continuously acquiring data on people and how they live their life, we can gain a much better understanding and propose both more appropriate and acceptable interventions.
Very interesting. I have one last question. Given the complexity that you're talking about, in terms of behavior, but also in terms of, people dealing with very complex diseases and very often a lot of comorbidities. You also talked about the fact that a lot of these approaches might not be linked to a specific drug. And if we look at comorbidities, they might not even be linked to a specific pathology. Now, our experience is that a major break on that kind of transformation is the mindset of the pharma industry, which is very much kind of competitive advantage. And that it's difficult to bring major pharma players to cooperate on patient innovations and on patient support. How do you think that attitude can change? Because you're doing a lot to try to change that attitude across the industry. How do you think pharma can move forward to cooperate more?
I think that one big factor that is going to potentially get over this inertia is the fact that if we do not cooperate in some of these areas, we are going to face a very serious issue of developability. For example, in cardiovascular. Now, in cardiovascular, you've got entities that we qualify as one that may be actually much more diverse from a mechanistic point of view. And if we do not cooperate as an industry, also with the academia, to fuel the understanding of a higher granularity of those entities, we are going to get stuck with our mega trials in mixed population, ending up having averaged out benefits that will lead actually to an averaged out interest from the healthcare systems, because you have only a limited size effect size due to the dilution. And in cardiovascular, if you think about what oncology has been going through during the last years, we went through, over the last 25 years, we went from breast cancer to 9 different entities. Still talking about heart failure with only a modulation on ejection fraction. There is a lot to do. And that's where we actually need to cooperate. And by also considering you still have a high unmet need in heart failure, but you're stuck because of this inability to better characterize subpopulations. So that may be one of the drivers. And the other driver is that we need to find a way as an industry to better interact with the healthcare systems and to go in that direction, because the healthcare systems are going to be more and more, demanding in terms of what is the benefit exactly we bring to what patients and how do we integrate that? Because there is a clear ask of getting way over incremental benefits. So with this pressure, it's going to drive some changes in the way we consider potential stratifications and potential pre-competitive activities. That's actually they were for also the genome, and you've got the IMI, you've got a lot of activity that came out. Still, it's pretty complicated for the pharma industry to find the strengths to go over those habits, and whole habits die hard. The other factor may be that if pharma is not doing it, others may start to be highly interested into that and become more relevant partners for healthcare, insurances, and so on. So, the external environment is probably going to shape pharma out of its inertia.
Very interesting. Very, very interesting. I have one last question for you, Jeanne, which we ask to all of our guests. You've had, as I said, a very successful career in pharma. We're of the same generation, and you have also focused more and more and more on patient support as opposed to more kind of traditional pharma roles. Was there anything in particular, any individual or any situation that really inspired you to dedicate your career more in the area of patient support as opposed to kind of traditional pharma?
Well, beyond the patients from my family and people with different conditions and different problems, I started my career in pharma, working at Novartis and working closely with transplant patients. And every transplant patient has a story. It's a story of life. It's a story of fear of death. It's a story of getting your life back and understanding that with such a big intervention and such a burden of treatment, what it means for a patient and what those patients are. Early on, I was working actually on trying to find biomarkers for rejection and so on. And I was looking into all the data of my cohort of samples and that I was studying. And usually what you see is the age of the receiver is quite young, and the age of the relative who gave an organ is obviously a parent. And in one case, I was facing a case where there was this lady of 56 years and who received the kidney from a 25-year-old. Obviously, a child gave his kidney to his mother. And when you see that, you say, I cannot betray those people. I need to do something. I need to do something to help, and I need to do something. So this super generous move with all the love in it has to be really taken care of and supported as far as we can. So it's early on, and I still, after 20 years, when I'm telling that story, I'm still extremely emotional about it.
As well can be understood. I understand very well. Well, thank you, Jeanne. That's really the time that we're ready to take from you. And I really appreciate the time that you've spent with us, giving us some of those insights, which are extremely useful and very inspiring as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. And it was very nice to talk to you.